So, Dave, I've got friends that are working in radio at WGN. My friend Wendy Snyder and her husband.
Wait, they're still in radio?
Yeah,
good for them.
And her husband Jimmy McInerney. They're good pals.
Yeah.
We're not having them on the show right now.
Who needs them?
We're having. They're much more talented.
They're yesterday's news, right? Let's forget it.
We're having their much more talented son Michael on, and we'll find out why right after this.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Man Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
So who is Michael McInerney? That's what you ask. I mean, he's a mere youngster, but he's already an accomplished and well-known musician in Chicago. As I mentioned, the spawn of radio royalty, the guitarist from the Vaughn Building. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
You know, when we were your age, we got out of bed around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It seems like you are taking a different approach. Looking over your bio, you're a pretty busy guy. I think we would suggest you try to pace yourself a little bit, as your latest album has rock, blues, folk, country, all these different styles. You're a hardworking young guitarist. Tell us about this album and why you're covering all these different genres at once.
So, growing up in a musical family, through osmosis, upon a lot of, different disparate musical things. My dad really loved Led Zeppelin and the Beatles, and I got into them as well as the people who influenced them. And then my mom really loves the Doors and a lot of late 70s, early 80s new wave acts. So I learned how to keep it weird and interesting. But yeah, I just, starting at probably around the time I was 10 or 11, I really got into the Beatles, and it was all downhill from there. And I mean, they could do any genre they wanted to. I didn't see why I couldn't either,
Yeah, that's a good point. I discovered the Beatles around the same age, and they had a profound impact on my life too. Went into rock and roll radio. That's where I met your parents. Go ahead.
Was there one album that they played too much? Because my mom played Fleetwood Mac too much.
She did?
No, I just made that up. My mom didn't know who Fleetwood Mac was.
My
mom had no idea who Fleetwood Mac was. But hypothetically, did one of your parents, I don't know, was there something that they ruined for you because they played too much?
That's a really good question. One thing I will say is, there is a lot of crossover between the music I listen to and the music my parents listen to. The one didn't stick, and my dad is going to hate me for saying this, but he is a very big Grateful Dead fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like a few Grateful Dead songs. I know about the history. They just don't really do it for me.
Thank you.
I think down to the fact that I like Quicksilver Messenger Service and Country Joe and the Fish, and they all kind of did everything they did together, but not as good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel the same way about the Grateful Dead. I went to see them 3 times. Dave was kind of a deadhead in college, and I saw them 3 times. The first time I saw them, I saw them totally sober.
Yeah,
and
I
thought,
do that.
I thought, well, maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
All right. And the second time I saw them, I wasn't sober, and I still didn't enjoy it.
Okay.
I thought, oh, great, a 27-minute drum solo. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't try the other stuff that Deadhead fans.
Trips.
Yeah, I did not do that. So maybe that was the third option. But yeah, I never got into them that much either.
Are you still living at home?
Yeah, so I think I might get kicked out.
I was going to say, you're screwed now. Yeah. Right. You're going to go home. You're going to go home, and they go, "Why don't you just live on Shakedown Street?"
Hey, I think that's a good song. I like St. Stephen. Some of the stuff like Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, but like, I don't know. I never clicked with me. I got like every band from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, your phone is cutting out in and out a little bit. So if you're in
hold
an
it
area
up
where
a little higher,
yeah,
to the earth.
I like to put a little bunny ears in it.
Tinfoil would be good.
Yeah.
So we're looking over some of the songs in your album, and looking at your bio, and it says that some of these have been noodling around in your head for like 8 years, right? And some of the songs that are on the album you wrote, not too long ago. How is your songwriting? I mean, you're 23 years old, yet you have a large catalog of work. How has your songwriting process evolved over the years? And, what was it like recording the older tracks that were, 8 years ago versus the ones that you wrote just a
So you were 15 when you wrote that?
Yeah, so I think I've gotten
Dude, did you
better.
not hear video games and laying around? What's going on here?
Well, I wasn't waking up at 3 p.m. I was waking up at 2:30.
Okay.
So,
much better.
I
Much
had an
better.
extra half hour to mess around with.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so, I started young, and I think that's what really helped. The first song I ever wrote was in middle school. I don't remember if it was 7th or 8th grade. It was just lyrics. I was a subpar bass player at the time.
Was it a crush? Did you have a crush on a teacher? Was it about a hot teacher's aide?
No, Van Halen already beat me to the punch on that one.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your story.
I don't really remember was other than it was a really bad George Harrison ripoff. It was, something. I was trying to be cosmic or something at the age of 13 years old. And I'd like to find those lyrics someday. I remember a little bit of them. I just kept writing, mostly started with lyrics. And then, I started playing guitar around the time I turned 14. And, yeah, I would just spend whole weekends just playing guitar, trying to write these songs and learning about what I liked in the songs I liked and kind of what made them work. And, I started mixing and matching different elements of different songs and different genres I liked. And I feel like I've gotten kind of a rhythm down with it now, which it's nice to look at doing and what you've done and kind of be happy where you were and happy where you're going.
Yeah. Well, as a Beatles fan, you know that you never throw anything away, right? The Beatles, on Let It Be, one of their last albums, did a song called One After 909, which they wrote when they were 15. And they just saved it. One day they're like, hey, how about that one? You never know when you're going to be able to use some of those old songs.
And you mentioned that you ripped off George Harrison. Didn't George Harrison rip off the
chiffons?
Yeah. So it's all in the family, buddy. It's no big deal.
So one of the tracks is on your album is a traditional blues song from the 1920s, and another one is inspired by a famous Illinois ghost story. Tell us about those two songs.
So, the album almost completely unintentionally to, my initial intentions has a little bit of a spooky theme going on with these two songs. And then I'd say Blue Eyes by bass player Crispin Dorvac also factors into that. But I've, around the time I turned 15, I got really into the blues. I think I started digging deep into what inspired Led Zeppelin, and I found Howlin' Wolf, and I found all these great blues artists. And, a few years later found St. James, and I was really drawn to this song and the transformative, almost chameleon-like quality this song has had over the almost 100 years it's been around. Everybody from Guthrie to Captain Beefheart to the Standells have done a version of this. It appears in, bunch of different movies and TV shows done by a bunch of different people. But, I also got really into Cab Calloway through inaugural viewing of the Blues Brothers,
right.
of course.
Yeah.
When I was a preteen. So, something about that song really spoke to me. And I love writing new material. That's my aspiration to, share the songs I've written with people and have them like them. But I think there's also something to be said about people who can interpret a song as well. I mean, look at Harry Nilsson. His biggest songs weren't even written by him, and he was a phenomenal writer. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to take the song in a direction that felt interesting to me, and something I hadn't really ever heard done before. So I think it's kind of interesting that one of the oldest songs on the album is kind of one of the more far out songs on it. It's the second longest song. It's kind of psychedelic. But, at the same time, I wanted to pay tribute to, people like Cab Calloway, Louis Armstrong, all these great blues artists that I love and enjoy. I hope I did that.
yeah, absolutely.
No, you did.
Yeah.
So one of the songs is about an Illinois ghost story. I'm not familiar with what. Tell us about that.
Resurrection Mary, and Resurrection Mary is also the story. So I think the first sighting of Resurrection Mary was sometime in either the 1910s or the 20s in Justice, Illinois. It's kind of one of the most famous examples of the phantom hitchhiker archetype. This story shows up in a bunch of different stuff. I'm pretty sure there's a story in that Creepshow 2 that Stephen King wrote, that old movie.
Really? Yeah. Cool.
But so Resurrection Mary was kind of the thing that popularized that. Basically, you pick up a girl on the side of the road for a ride, which you shouldn't do anymore because it's illegal.
Right.
But once you bring her to her destination, which is usually the cemetery in Justice, which I believe was called the Resurrection Cemetery or something like that, she'd get out of the car and disappear.
Ooh.
Well, now she's just using Uber.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If you go to Chicago and take one of those ghost tours, because they're available usually in October. You take a Chicago ghost tour. This is always one of the stops to this Resurrection Mary.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it kind of is the quintessential Illinois ghost story. And, to my surprise, there wasn't really much that was written about her, musically anyway. I think there was an Ian Hunter song from, like, the 90s. But, yeah, so I took the story of Resurrection Mary, and I kind of conflated it with the recent story of the Willowbrook Ballroom burning down.
Right.
I believe that was like 5 years ago, maybe 7.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be interesting to kind of combine the two together because the two are
similar.
Story. Yeah. They're right around the same area. Sometimes the story involves picking up the hitchhiker at the Willowbrook Ballroom. So it was kind of a natural thing. And the two things that seem to have influenced that song are Jim Croce and T-Rex, which I think is kind of an interesting combination.
Yeah.
But that's actually one of my favorite songs on the album. I'm happy you guys brought that up. And it's a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you also, like we've already talked about some of these landmarks in Illinois this is a very kind of Illinois type album, and, it seems, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that it is important for you to kind of incorporate these personal and regional kind of Illinois. I mean, you're a Chicago guy, it's part of who you are. And I think that, and you mentioned about the blues, and it appears that definitely these are important parts of your life.
I love Illinois. And, growing up here my entire life, it really formed a lot of who I was as a person and, kind of my musical taste as well. I was lucky enough to be able to see, and still am able to see a lot of great local blues artists. Really on any given weekend, you go to Rosa's or, even some places in the burbs have some pretty good blues cred.
Yeah.
And, you can see all this music and, like I said, the Blues Brothers, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm very proud to admit it.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Very strong. I think I watched it at the right time growing up to kind of, it got me into Cab Calloway and James Brown and, like Booker T and the MGs.
Yeah.
All these great musicians that showed up in that movie. And we kind of pay tribute to them on the album cover for Sockin' It To Ya. We took that at the old Joliet prison.
Wow.
Yeah, on a Sunday a few months ago, we drove up one of the access roads in my bass player's 1950 Chevrolet Styline.
Oh, wow.
And you picked up a hitchhiker.
And by the time we got to the prison, she disappeared and left us a 1-star rating.
Yeah.
Those ghosts, they always kill you on Yelp. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, and then, you never know who you upset because they disappear before they leave the review.
That's true.
But, I tried to take... That was kind of a thing somewhat intentionally and also somewhat unintentionally in the writing of the album. I wanted it to kind of reflect my love for the music of Illinois and some of the stories and locales.
Well, I personally think this is a great album. Tell everybody where they can get it, what it's called, where it is, what's the best way to find it. Plug away. So,
the album is called Sockin' It To Ya by my band, the Vaughn Building. And you can find it on streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music. You can buy it on iTunes.
Yes,
it's on YouTube.
Buy.
Yes, exactly.
We have physical CDs printed. For now, they're only available at our live shows, which you can keep up with if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram. But pretty soon we should have those available to purchase online as well. Once I figure out the shipping situation.
What about 8-tracks and cassettes there,
Yeah.
Michael? You're going to be doing an 8-track thing?
Well,
you could start a new trend.
Tell you what, if we sell a few more CDs, maybe we can look into that.
Okay. Well, it's free marketing advice from Dave. Dave has a master's degree in marketing, so you might want to take that seriously. Well, Michael, thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule and chatting with us. Especially here, we're doing this at 1:00 in the afternoon. An hour before you normally get up. We appreciate that very much. Say hi to your parents for us.
Right.
And we'll see you around. Next time we see you're playing, we'll come out and watch a show because I've seen you play once or twice before, and you are really good.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you guys so much for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I'll have to hook you guys up with a CD next time I see you.
Yeah,
sounds good.
Do.
Thanks, Michael. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, there he goes. That's Michael McInerney.
I hope he does a song about dibs in Chicago.
Oh, that's a nice
Right?
idea. That's a nice idea.
Sure.
Yeah, his parents are the greatest. You know, Wendy Snyder and I, we started around the same time at the Loop back in the 80s. His dad was a producer for Kevin Matthews and for Johnny B, and is working at WGN Radio now in the production department. So, I mean, they're good people. But I got to tell you, this kid, he's got talent.
He's got the goods.
He's got the goods. I'm highly recommending this album. Be sure to go out and get it. And we have people to thank. We need to thank Brandon for scoring this guest for us. We also have to thank Tony Lasano with Opie Shows. Thank you, Tony. He is the executive producer of this show.
Ed Silla, thank you.
Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Great Talk Radio isn't dead. It's just moved to a better place. RadioMisfits.com. And will we be back again next week, Dave? I think we will be.
Yeah, we've got another interview. Yeah, we're working fingers to
our
the bone.
butts off. We'll be back again next week with a brand new episode of
Minutia Men Celebrity Interview.
The proceeding was a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Find our other great shows on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at RadioMisfits.com. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?